more importantly, to foresee challenges that could be unburdened by what has been. I had to throw it. I don't know why I threw that in there. It just rolled off the tongue, Danny.
I love it. I love it. Yes.
I'm here with Andrew the lender. We are talking mortgage, finance, all of the changes in the real estate and mortgage industry today. We're going to have a lot of fun. So whether you're thinking of relocating somewhere, buying your first home, buying an investment property, or even selling a home, this is a video that you definitely want to check out and know. There's so much going on in the industry right now. You want to know what's happening. Andrew, how'd I do?
Phenomenal.
Okay. So if you're watching this, you may remember Andrew from the video we did on the channel where we raced supercars over at the Speedway. And that was actually one of the first videos on the channel. Senor, how was it? Didn't do as well as I thought it would.
You know, you win some, you lose some.
That's right. But we had a lot of fun.
But it's not a loss. We had a great time.
Yes, we did.
And it was I had never done anything like that before.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, so that was fantastic.
That was really good. But we are here to talk about mortgage and finance because right now is such a critical time in the industry. There's so much going on, and so I am so excited to chat about real estate, mortgage, finance, and everything kind of in between. So let's rock and roll.
Let's rock and roll, man. Well, first, before we get into the mortgage, actually, what are your thoughts on this adjustment being made to the industry right now with the NAR settlement and everything like that? How do you think that's going to influence things for buyers, sellers, and realtors in general?
Yeah. I usually don't swear on the YouTube channel, but I have one word for this whole situation: cluster. That's the word for the. I'll bleep it.
Yeah.
That's the word for the situation. The people that did really well in this are the class action lawyers.
100%.
They made a boatload of money, and they're all on an island somewhere right now laughing at the whole industry. And we were all left to pick up the pieces of this thing. And really, it made everything a lot more confusing for everyone: buyers, sellers, realtors, lenders. Everyone's confused. No one knows what to do. There's so much misinformation out there. I read an article this week that really pissed me off because it said that commissions were artificially inflating home prices. And I'm like,
it's utter BS.
Whoever wrote that never took economics,
So stupid.
So my thought is just, hey, we'll adjust. Everything will be fine. We'll get there. But from here to where everyone actually understands what's going on is going to take a while and a lot of confusion in between.
A lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's going to be difficult for realtors who are newer or not seasoned. It's going to be difficult for them to set expectations.
Correct.
With sellers and then buyers.
Yeah.
Because, it's incumbent upon the seller essentially to make the decision on what the commission is going to be for the buyer side.
Yes.
Proactively.
Exactly.
Am I correct in that?
That's right. So it's not going to be published in the MLS any longer. It's going to be a seller-paid concession or commission, whatever you want to call it. And it's going to be up to the seller. And so now you're going to have situations where buyers can't pay commission, obviously, because it's a lot of cash and things like that. And the sad part about the whole thing, Andrew, is that the people that this hurts, as always, are either your first-time home buyers.
That's exactly right.
Folks who don't have the cash, to pay, who are tight on their budget already, tight on their ratios. Those are all the people that are going to get hurt. But then these folks go out and say, "Oh, we're trying to, help the industry and all that." It's all bogus. It only hurt. It only helped the lawyers, and all the consumers are kind of left to pick up the mess.
As always.
Yeah, that's right. So
as always,
there's the 30-second overview of what's going on.
Cluster.
Yes, that's the word, man. That's what they did. Now, I will tell you, there is one good thing that's come out of this.
Okay.
The one good thing that has come out of this is that buyers now need to sign a buyer representation agreement with their agent prior to touring homes.
Yes.
Now I have a funny story for you about this. When I left being an attorney and I started being a real estate broker, I remember I looked at all the forms. We started our own brokerage, at the time. And I looked at all the forms and I found the listing agreement. I was like, okay, easy. Fill in the blank, I found the buyer broker agreement. I'm like, okay, simple. And I used it all the time. 3 years later, we merged our little brokerage into a bigger, like, national brokerage, and we were doing really well. And they're like, "Hey, you work with a lot of buyers. Can you teach a class?"
Yes.
So I'm like, "Sure." So I go into the room. There's like 50 people in the classroom, and I'm teaching a class on how to work with buyers.
Right.
And I go through my process. I'm like, I have them do a consultation, and then at the end of the consultation, they sign a representation agreement. Half the class was like, "Wait, you do what?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, doesn't everyone?" And they're like, "No, like no one does. No one here." This was in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And they're like, "No one uses the buyer broker agreement." And I'm like, "What do you mean? Why wouldn't you? But the standard practice for most agents was not to. And of course, now, like, how everyone's always at the Game 7 of the World Series. Now everyone's like, "Oh no, I always did it."
Right. Of course.
Nonsense. They
Right.
didn't. And so that is one great thing, because now I think buyers, agents will be forced to have that consultation up front.
Yes.
They'll be forced to talk about, the services they provide, the value they add, and then sign the agreement. I think that's a good thing.
I think one positive that comes out of this is that it's going to weed out a lot of people
Yes,
in the industry,
Yeah.
leaving only the great stuff
for sure.
on the top.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
So all the good stuff is going to rise
Yeah.
to the top.
Yeah.
And so that only, I think, is a benefit to buyers and sellers,
Yeah.
to have actual professionals
Correct.
taking care of them.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of the positive end of it.
I agree. Now, Andrew, on the flipping the script on the lending side,
Sure.
How does it impact you, and how are you seeing the changes on your end?
Well, it's interesting because in my personal book of business, the vast majority of my business comes from referrals.
Right.
With realtors.
Sure.
Right? And also
Of course.
past clients, of course.
Yes.
And so what's interesting to me is, the realtors that I'm having, conversations with and how they're approaching this and thinking about this. I think the ones who are really going to use this to their advantage are ones first that are not scared.
Right.
Are not approaching this from a perspective of the sky is falling.
Sure.
But they're actually using it to their advantage and educating people up front about, hey, this is what's coming.
Yeah.
Having conversations. I had a phenomenal conversation with one of my phenomenal realtor partners the other day. She was actually at an open house, and she was educating them at the open house about, hey, if you're looking to buy this, here are the new, guidelines coming out.
Yeah.
We need to be able to represent you. We need to have an agreement in place.
Yeah.
And of course, she did a way better job of explaining it than I would have in this moment, of course, because my focus is on the lending side.
Of course.
But I think those who understand the ins and outs of what this means, and they approach it from a place of confidence in educating buyers and sellers.
Right.
The people who educate and educate well and understand the value they bring to the table,
Yeah.
those are the folks who are going to continue doing well in the business.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. So that's, I guess, from that perspective, it's not all bad. Once we kind of weed out. So, Andrew, specific question for you on this.
Sure.
So what do you do with the buyer who, let's say, their listing agent or their buyer's agent, I'm sorry, show them a property, seller isn't offering any concessions, there's, 5 offers, so they can't really build it into the deal and all that. And then on the lending side, they come to you and they're like, hey, how do I pay the buyer agent commission? Can you structure that into the loan somehow?
There are ways to do that. So what you're essentially asking is if there's no way to build it into the purchase price.
Right.
Now, there are ways, of course, to increase the purchase price in exchange for that.
Correct.
However, that actually the property has to appraise
Right.
at that
Right.
value. I don't think we would run into an issue where we wouldn't have an issue with appraising at that a little extra bit.
Got it.
Because, 9 times out of 10, we're talking about 3%
Exactly.
commission
Yeah.
here. So, if a property is, listed for $300,000, just for simple math in my own head, is the property, what if we increase the purchase price to $309,000
Exactly.
instead of $300,000?
Right.
Is it going to appraise at $309,000? Perfect. Then we already have our 3% commission built right in.
And that's how you build in that concession. Now, are there limits on how much concession you can give with certain loan programs? Will you run into any issues there?
There are, but they're also making adjustments for this specific thing.
Right.
To account for the realtor commission.
Okay.
So I believe the realtor commission, I need to confirm on this, but is actually outstanding. It's separate
I see.
from the max allowable credit provided by the seller.
Got it. Okay.
And so
great.
typically, the max allowable credit for a conventional loan, if you're putting less than 10% down, is 3%. Okay. Now, but let's say the realtor wants to make 3%. Well, that 3% on the realtor side is going to be separate from the max allowable credit, 3% to the buyer
I see.
themselves.
Okay, that makes sense.
Again, we'll need to come back and confirm that. But
We'll give the legal disclaimer. Nothing you see here is legal advice or tax advice.
no one was hurt in the making of this video.
Yeah, that's right. Andrew, for this reason, though, I will say I think it is even more critical now
100%.
to meet with your lender
Yes.
and your real estate agent all up front. Because
100%.
you don't want to wait until you put the offer in to realize that, oh, hey, because this seller is not giving a concession, this structure is not going to work, right?
Absolutely.
So important.
That I always go back to the perspective of, and the conversations, when I first have a conversation with a buyer and they're introduced to me through a realtor partner of mine, I really want to make sure that that buyer feels like the realtor and I are a team on their behalf.
Yes.
That's everything.
Right.
Because buying a home is going to be the biggest purchase of your life, likely.
Yeah.
And having someone, two people, realtor, lender, who are local professionals.
Yeah.
And local is a key word there as well.
Yeah.
Someone who understands the terrain of the market.
Right.
Who understands, okay, what could appraisals look like?
Sure.
What are there any local lender, things that they need to be aware of?
Right.
And also, of course, working with a team who they work well together. They help a lot of people together, and they're also recognized as professionals in the industry.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what's most important, because on your end as a realtor, you're excellent at negotiating on the buyer's behalf or the seller's behalf if you're on the listing side.
Yeah.
But also really wanting to understand, hey, what home really is what you're, what are you really looking for?
Right.
Excuse me. On my end, I'm really focused on making sure I understand their financial goals.
Yeah.
That's why typically when we're going through the pre-approval process, which is so important, is I ask a couple of really important questions. Number one, what is your ideal to max monthly payment?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Number two is, how much do you have set aside to bring towards closing cost and the down payment?
Mm-hmm.
Literally knowing those two answers for me before we get into the loan application stuff,
Yeah.
that helps me understand exactly, kind of working backwards, what the purchase price is going to be.
Right. Makes sense.
Because I can let you know the max that you qualify for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can buy a $1 million home, but are you going to be happy or comfortable with the monthly payment
Sure.
associated with that house?
Yeah.
Right? Are you prepared for the down payment required? Right?
Yeah.
And so I take sort of an overview, holistic approach of, yeah, we can definitely identify the best loan options available to you and that are aligned with your goals that we set up front. But also, is it something that when you go to the closing table, you feel that you've been given all of the information you needed to make the best decision for you and your family?
Yeah. No, and Andrew, I will say from firsthand experience, because we recently were able to help a buyer, close a transaction, that process is very smooth with you, and the way you work as a team with the client and then also the agent, I think you're right. I mean, that is critical, because we'll get people that are like, oh, don't worry about it. I have I went with some online lender who I've never talked to,
Yeah.
and, because the rate was lower. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that buyers make. I tell buyers all the time, forget about the rate. Everyone's got the same rates. You need to find someone like you that's professional that can guide you through the process. That's the most important.
100%. I always tell people, hey, whether you go to, are you going to get a better experience at Walmart or at Whole Foods?
Yeah, that's right.
Whole
That's
Foods.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes there may be a difference in cost.
I hate Whole Foods, but
Do you really?
I hate every supermarket.
I love going to Whole Foods. This video is sponsored by Whole Foods. No,
Listen, there's a couple reasons I got married. One is so I don't have to go to the supermarket. You don't know that yet.
I would love for Whole Foods to sponsor this video. That'd be fantastic.
Call Amazon.
Call Amazon.
Bezos.
Yeah, help us out, Bezos.
Yeah, that's right.
But where was I? Oh,
The point is well taken.
The quality.
Sorry. Yeah.
The quality, right?
Yeah.
But also having someone local who you have my personal cell phone number.
Right.
You know, I'm available nights and weekends. Don't go crazy.
I'm not, so please, call Andrew. If you have any issues, call Andrew.
Yes. But it's having that relation. To me, it's about the relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
For us, it's about the relationship.
Of course.
Because when we help someone go through that process, we also want to make sure we're helping their friends and family.
So Andrew, to me, like every transaction is really just a series of problems and challenges, I will call them, to get through. And I think that's the other reason that you have to have great professionals. And contrary to what you see on social media, my friends, there is no perfectly smooth transaction. You know, I was making fun of realtors the other day because I was like, every realtor when they close, you know, they make that post like, my seller was the best and my buyer was the greatest and I'm best friends with the agent and you know this and I'm always like, come on.
That's right.
We know.
100%.
We know what happened. You know,
100%.
like we know you're ready to kill the other agent and it's all the normal stuff. But
That's
anyway,
right.
the point was like, I think that having professionals that can guide you through and solve those challenges, you know, without making you crazy.
And more importantly, to foresee challenges that could be.
Yeah.
Unburdened by what has been. I had to throw it. I don't know why I threw that in there. It just rolled off the tongue, Danny.
I love it. Yes, because in the transaction, there's a passage of time.
Well, but in the passage of time, there's time that passes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's important to understand.
And at the closing, you're further along than you were when the transaction started.
Well, you're not prior to the process starting.
Could you imagine just talking this way the whole time, and at the end of the thing,
Would you work with a lender or agent?
That's
Do you
right,
talk like
that's
that?
right, yeah.
Buying a home is like buying a home.
That's right.
And if you bought before, you know that what buying a home is like because then you bought a home before.
But there are some people that are going to be like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
They're so smart.
That really makes a lot of sense.
We don't talk like that in Texas, fortunately.
No, we'd give you the straight shot, man.
Amen.
Yeah, so that all of that I think is super important. Great topics for sure.
Yeah, and so what I was actually going to say when I was saying that was, since we've been doing this for years now, I've been doing this for 10 years, you've been doing this for a long time, I know what problems may arise down the road.
Yes.
And so I keep that in mind and I address that during the pre-approval process.
Correct. Yeah.
Are you pre-approved? Right, and I'm adhering to the guidelines I know that the underwriters are going to adhere to.
Right.
Right, and so I know how to avoid mistakes.
In most cases, sometimes they trip you up at the end.
Sometimes they do, only because.
We've had that happen.
But also sometimes guidelines could even change.
Sure.
Right, or sometimes underwriters are not going to include all the things that they were looking for originally.
Yeah.
Either way, it's all about, like you said, identifying solutions.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and that's, I think, what separates the best from everybody else.
100%. I totally agree. So, Andrew, let me ask you this question. A lot of consumers, you know, I get so many questions about lending and stuff. What is the difference between, hey, going to you, AndrewTheLender.com, or, hey, I just walk into my local, you know, Chase or B of A or whatever and go to their home mortgage guy?
Number one, I would say the biggest thing I'm always going to focus on is truly understanding you and your goals. Because that informs all of the lending stuff on the background.
Yeah.
Right? You know, really, like I said before, I want to understand what is the most ideal situation financially when you're purchasing this home, but also taking into context, hey, what is your overall plans for buying this house?
Yeah.
You know, how long are you going to be in this house? You know, where are interest rates right now? Are we going to be looking to refinance soon after this?
Yeah.
Are there any programs, special programs that are available to you?
About unburdened by
My whole philosophy is unburdening you, right?
Keep going. Sorry.
That's my philosophy is unburdening you, making your life simple.
Yeah.
By what has been. And
Sorry.
Anyway, you're good.
We won't cut any of that.
So,
just keep
no, I love this. I say keep all of it.
That's right.
But then on the other end, it's, you know, once I understand what your goals are,
Yeah.
I'm also a mortgage broker. So what that means is I am fully independent.
Right.
So whenever I'm going through the pre-approval process, really what I'm also doing in the background in my mind, where I'm thinking is, okay, I can literally shop around to every lender out there
Yep.
on behalf of the buyer.
Yep.
And so not only, that's what really separates me, is because yes, I really care about the relationship, understanding you, your family, what your goals are, the context, but then also I have the ability to then take that information and then search and shop on your behalf to, okay, what is this lender able to provide you? What is this lender? I'm able to broker that,
Yep.
right? Then once I am able to take a look at all the available options, I can review all of those options with the buyer and say, hey, let's see which one makes the most sense for you.
Sure.
Because people can make a great decision when they have all of the available information.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Also, Andrew, I will say from personal experience in one of our transactions, if something happens, if something goes sideways out of your control, you also have the ability to switch that over to a different lender. If you walk into Chase,
100%.
you get denied halfway through.
Exactly right.
That's it, So it's a huge advantage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I were tied to a certain lender and things, go sideways, if I don't have the option or the freedom to look elsewhere,
Right.
then
Exactly.
that's that. But thankfully, I do have the option to do that.
Yeah. I'm not knocking Chase, by the way. We bank there, so I like Chase.
I bank at Chase too. Chase, don't raise my...
That's right. They're going to watch this video and be like, that's it. Those guys are out.
That's right.
No, they won't do that. So, Andrew, you mentioned rates. We can't do a real estate mortgage video without talking about mortgage rates, because
100%.
obviously those have changed a lot. Just love to hear what's going on with rates now, and then I have a crystal ball question for you.
Sure. Overall rates are, there's a lot of news from the Fed that they do expect for rates to drop a little bit in September.
Yep.
Of course, it's very convenient that we're right up to an election here in a couple months.
Yeah.
And so I am expecting for rates to drop a little bit.
Yep.
And so, but really that's not, I think, really what the question is, because it's much broader than this.
Okay.
Asking questions about the rates are very important, but also taking into account, okay, well, what does a rate change mean for the market? And does it mean that, hey, well, if we're expecting for rates to drop considerably, should I just wait to buy for when rates go lower?
Right.
The answer is, if you're able to buy today when rates are higher, buy today.
Yeah.
Buy today. Why is that? With higher rates, you see less people willing to get into the market.
Right.
Right? A higher rate simply means the payment's going to be more expensive. When the payment's more expensive, less people are apt to get into the market and buy the house.
Right.
So what does that mean? It means if you're serious, if you're able to buy today with a higher rate, you're not going to have to deal with as much competition today.
Yeah.
And then later on, when rates drop after you've lived in the house, refinance the rate and lower it. Your payment's going to drop a whole lot.
Yeah, that's right. I would second that. Not from a perspective of everyone going, oh, well, they're realtors, so they're just going to always say buy now. But what I will say is that, whenever rates drop, I'm going to take the other side of the coin.
Sure.
When rates drop, then all of a sudden you see all the buyers flood the market, and with that, what happens is you get the upward pressure on prices, and so you're going to be paying a higher price, maybe at a lower rate, and at the end of the day, then your property taxes are higher. You've paid more for the house, and so it really does even out. Like you said, if you're able to do it, you do it.
100%. And like you said, when rates drop considerably, a whole lot of people who have been sitting on the sidelines are going to flood the market.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you're going to have to compete with a whole lot of other people for the same house.
Yeah, because your pre-approval number your purchasing power goes up.
Correct.
Right? And so now you're going to go look at houses that are more expensive, or house prices are going to come up a little bit.
That's right.
And so that's what you ultimately always see. All right, so crystal ball question. I know we're in an election year. We won't hold you to it. We'll put that disclaimer there too. Where will the rate be? Just on a normal kind of 30-year thing, end of the year. We're putting you under the gun.
I wish I had one of those, that thing from Toy Story.
Oh yeah.
Where he was.
Right.
Let's see. So right now, I think we're hovering around in the mid to high sixes conventional loans.
Yeah. Okay.
Currently,
We're sitting here in mid-August, by the way.
Mid-August is August 16th.
You could be watching this at a totally different date.
At the time that so August 16th, 2024 is when we're shooting this video. And I would say maybe in the low 6s, high 5s by the end of the year.
Excellent. So we'll come down a little bit from where we are.
Yeah, don't hold me to it, but
No, for sure.
For FHA and VA loans, they're already sort of in the low 6s, high 5s.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, that sounds good. So rates should come down a little bit again. That'll boost some of the activity, and more buyers will come into the market and all that good stuff.
100%.
Yeah, excellent. Such good topics. There's so much to talk about, I think, with lending. I think we touched on, such important things with what buyers should be thinking about right now, what they should be doing, the team they should be assembling with their realtor and their lender partner. I mean, it's so important, I think, when you're purchasing a home. And the thing I hate to see being in the industry for so long is people that, they take like buying a toaster more seriously than buying a house. Like they'll research, they're buying something, they're going to go on Amazon and they're reading all about it and they're spending weeks. And then when it comes to buying a house, they're like, oh, Rocket Mortgage and my cousin's nephew who just got his license. Fine, no problem,
Right.
I'm always so confused by that. It doesn't make any sense to me, So if you're watching this, do your research, but also make sure that you're hiring professionals like Andrew, like myself, that can really guide you and help you through that process.
And you'll be able to see whether or not, when you're having conversations with people like us who are professionals in the industry, whether we know what we're talking about or not.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And so, if we're, and that really comes down to the questions that we're asking you, the things that we're addressing in the conversation, it's going to become very clear very quickly how much knowledge someone has.
Yeah.
And that should be a big determining factor on whether that person is going to be the best person for you to work with.
Yeah, that's right. All right, Andrew, good question for you. So we talked about how realtors get paid. I get this question a lot, actually, is how does the mortgage broker get paid?
We get paid by essentially a mortgage is a product, just like everything else.
Yeah.
And products have profit margin built right into them. And so typically, the rates that everyone experiences have embedded in them compensation for mortgage companies.
Okay, got it.
And mortgage loan officers and brokers like myself.
Makes sense. So again, buyers not cutting you a check, they're not they're not paying you directly.
Correct.
It's all built into the transaction for them as a buyer.
Exactly right.
Excellent. Okay, good.
Exactly.
So it's important to know. A lot of people ask, and no one ever.
Yeah, it is very interesting, because everyone sort of knows, 3% realtors.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
3% of the sales price, you're getting X amount, right?
Yes.
Although no one really takes into account fees and everything else and all the expenses you have to incur on your end. My compensation is directly tied to the loan.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that
itself
makes sense.
on the back end.
Excellent. Is there anything, Andrew, that you have that we may not have covered that is going on right now in lending that consumers need to know or that we need to talk about?
I would simply say, because if there's one thing consistently that I come across, and if you're still watching, thank you for still watching. Hit like and subscribe.
Yeah, that's right. Wherever you're watching us.
That's right. I would say this is the biggest purchase of your life likely. There's likely going to be a lot of fear due to uncertainty. That's why I always recommend having conversations early with local professionals that you know, like, and trust, and asking your friends and family for recommendations for people, for a great realtor, for a great lender, that they would recommend to you, assuming, of course, they had a good experience. And getting pre-approved and knowing what your options look like is a very simple process to go through.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have uncertainty or fear because they wonder, well, gosh, I don't really know if I'm ready, or I don't know if, I'll qualify in general. I'm looking at my credit scores on Credit Karma, and I see a couple of things here that I don't like.
Right.
And I'm worried about that. Don't be worried, I would say. Knowledge is the thing that, will help you know the right steps to take.
Yeah.
To put yourself in a better position tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? And so work with someone who is there for you to be your guide.
Yeah.
Your advisor. Right. Because then once you know, okay, well, let's say that, gosh, okay, maybe I'm not able to buy today. At least you know what it will take to be a buyer tomorrow.
That's right. Yeah.
And so have a conversation with someone who cares for your best interests, who will be there to guide you. Have those conversations because when you have the knowledge, you'll feel a lot more confident about making the right decision.
Yeah, that's right. I used to know a lender in Southern California who would call the client and say, "Hey, listen, I have great news. You're pre-approved. Not yet, but in a year, you are pre-approved."
I'm going to start using that.
But the point, I think the point you make is so important that it's like, hey, listen, I'm of the opinion, being an immigrant family that came to the United States from a different country.
That's right.
And, my parents started buying real estate early on.
Yes.
And I've always loved real estate. I've always been in the real estate business. I was a real estate attorney. And so I think buying real estate is the best way to build wealth for your family, to, home ownership, American dream, all that stuff, right? And like you said, if you can't do it today, at least let's get you on the path. Every issue is fixable, whether it's credit
solution to every problem.
or income or whatever it is, we can fix it, right? If you know. And so get with Andrew, get with a realtor and start getting on that path because it doesn't have to take a long time.
No.
I mean, you could probably get someone that's in the worst possible situation to home ownership within a year, I would say, at the most, right?
Yeah, and I know phenomenal credit experts.
Right.
Too. Who know exactly the right ways to make recommendations to improve credit.
Yeah.
Quickly and over time, just depending on what is involved. But yeah. Mm-hmm. If not today, tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's super important. So if you're thinking about buying a home, if you're relocating, if it's something that's, even kind of an inkling, just have a conversation, And by the way, it doesn't cost you anything to have the conversation.
It's
free.
literally free.
It's no brainer with both realtors and mortgage brokers. So, Andrew, I want to thank you for your time, man. This is so awesome.
Thank you, Danny.
Such great value. A lot of the people watching the channel, I know you like the big fancy home tours and stuff like that, but this is actual value that you can use to build wealth, to buy a home for your family or buy a second home or
100%.
investment property, and whatever that looks like. Well, Andrew, I got to tell you, phenomenal value. Obviously, all the links and everything's going to be down in the description. So reach out to Andrew directly. He can hook you up with everything loan related. And I got you on the real estate side and anything you need. And thank you so much for tuning into the video. Now, like I said, a lot of you like these fancy home tours. My favorite one on the channel so far is touring the Bentley residences, which is not yet built, but Barron, my 9-year-old, and I went out there and took a look, and he had the chocolate cake at the Bentley Cafe, which he said was the best ever. So check out that video next.